I really feel like we need to all come together and like have a big ass strike against the government because this inflation is like ridiculous. Like, how is everything going up but the wages? It's not making sense.
Hello everyone, this is Emmanuel Cook. We will be reacting to a new video today, so make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's get into the video.
So this is exactly the correct answer. Historically, wages grow at a greater rate than inflation. But recently, that spread has compressed, and even during COVID and a little bit after COVID, inflation went up at a much higher rate than wages. I apologize for the makeshift graph, but I hope I can get my point across here. As you can see, the black line is inflation and the blue line is wages. And starting in 2020, inflation has been growing at a much higher rate than wages. And if you fast forward to around 2023, wages have started to take over, but that spread is much lower than historical standards. So you're spot on. The problem is that wages have not grown quick enough to keep up with the rate of inflation, and that is why people are really struggling now.
5 silver quarters was the minimum wage. $1.25 in 1960 is now $30 today. The minimum wage of today, reduced in inflation back to 1964, would be less than 50 cents compared to the $1.25 that it actually was. Maybe, if we based minimum wage off of something consistent that always goes up with inflation, like, I don't know, silver, we would solve the issue. It's not the specific number. Whenever a billionaire gets richer, they don't get richer. The economy inflates around them, keeping their wealth the same. So when minimum wage doesn't move with it, the only thing that happens when billionaires get richer is actually people get poorer. If minimum wage continued to go up with inflation, so it was $30 an hour and climbing, then billionaires would suddenly realize, oh, maybe we should stop trying to inflate the economy to make our numbers go up so we feel better about our lack of penises.
There is no such thing as a worker shortage. I hate when people use this term because that's not true and it's misleading. There is a wage shortage. Jobs aren't paying enough to keep up with this ongoing uptick in inflation. It's already bad enough that they expect maximum effort for minimum pay, but now it's to the point where even the checks aren't cutting it to live anywhere, or buy the bare minimum of necessities without having to crunch your money together. Stop giving this failed economic system leeway, when the very essence of it is built to strip you of your humanity. Just think about how many people are apathetic towards what's going on in the world because they're worried about their rent. Like, I'm not going to fault anybody for worrying about their rent, but you got to see the writing on the wall. They want you to continue to be financially stressed out so you don't worry about all the negative stuff that they're doing on the other side. Capitalism doesn't breed innovation, it breeds drones. Lifeless, emotionless drones.
Since 2009, the federal minimum wage, which is the lowest minimum wage you can earn by law, has been at $7.25 an hour. Since the federal minimum wage hasn't increased or kept up with inflation, if you're making $7.25 an hour, your paycheck is worth less today than it was in 2009. If you live in one of the 20 states where the minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour, like Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina, it's like you're really making $6.02 an hour thanks to inflation. That's according to the Balances Analysis of Data from the U.S. Department of Labor and the U.S. Census Bureau. Because inflation has made essentials like food and gas so expensive, people living in these states likely don't have enough to afford the newfound higher costs of living. How has inflation been impacting your wallet lately? Let us know in the comments.
So wages have grown 3.6% in the last 12 months. But here's why that's not necessarily a good thing. Over that same period of time, inflation has actually grown 6%. So what that means is your real wages have actually fallen. And therefore, the 3.6% we see in wage increases is basically all eaten up by the cost of living increases, increased prices for everything. It means that you're not actually able to buy anything more than you weren't able to buy before. In fact, you're actually able to buy less because everything's just become more expensive. So despite your increase in wages, you really have no more purchasing power. And therefore, your real wages have actually gone down.
77% of Americans are in debt, according to Google, and the average debt is $58,000. Wages are not keeping up with inflation, which is usually the case when you have high inflation. The official inflation number is 6%, but that's probably a low estimate, meaning that if you didn't get at least a 6% raise, you are taking a pay cut this year. With the petrodollar on shaky ground, that does not look good for our inflation rates over the long term. And as I understand it, it may make it more difficult for the US to pay on its own national debt. If anybody in the comments knows more about that than I do, please inform me. And I shared in a video earlier this month that it is a very good time to be in debt when there is high inflation, because every day the dollar is worth less and less, meaning your debt is worth less and less. And a lot of people made the comment that that only matters if your income paces inflation, meaning that you can still service your debt and pay all your bills. But if inflation hits that tipping point, what will happen is most people will start to default on the debt that they are servicing. I'm a millennial. I was born in 1991, and I have never known a life without credit scores. And I'm really curious to see what would happen in a scenario where most people were not able to pay on debt, and so their credit scores were essentially rendered useless. Is this what happened in 2008? Did you just have most Americans demolishing their credit scores because they weren't able to pay on their debt? And maybe worrying about the credit scores is the least of our issues when we're dealing with massive inflation. Maybe we're going to be more worried about buying food. A lot of people have asked me in the comments, should I still buy a car? Should I still buy a house, etc.? And yes, I think that you should still play by the rules of the system until it is clear that the rules don't apply. And I think it will be very clear when the rules don't apply anymore. If inflation gets to 100% or 200%. It's never happened here. It didn't happen during the American Revolution. It didn't happen during the Civil War. It didn't happen during the Great Depression. We've always been able to pull a rabbit out of our ass, and I don't know if we will this time. I know that a lot of the smart people I know have been worried since January, and some of them have been worried since 2021. But I also know that they are often wrong because the economy is incredibly difficult to predict because there are so many inputs. But I do know that you ought to be building up other types of capital in your life, particularly social capital, connections, friendships, family. Also intellectual capital. Trade in information and learn as much as you can. Stay informed about what's going on. And if it becomes clear that these monopoly rules don't apply anymore, don't play by them anymore.
That's the thing, most inflation is just companies raising their prices. I 100% agree, raising their prices and not paying their employees more. And you know why they do this, why it consistently works in their favor. It's because that means that the minimum wage is worth less, that you have to spend more of your money to get more things, which means they ultimately make more money off of your back. Even if you increase the minimum wage, it won't keep up with inflation, which is precisely why we need to continue to raise it, because if we don't raise it, nobody's going to be able to afford anything. And we already can't afford anything. I always like to put it into the perspective of, like, if you asked a random person on the street to perform a lot of the minimum wage tasks that are required, and you told them, hey, I want you to go clean those bathrooms for an hour, and I'm going to pay you $7.25. I'm going to pay you $7.25 for an hour of your time. Everybody would look at you like you're insane. They can make $7.25 way easier than that. That's ridiculous. But they're banking on the fact that people are poor enough, that they need food badly enough, that they cannot afford their rent, to the point of having to work multiple minimum wage jobs just to get by. And that is unfortunately common. I, myself, worked multiple jobs to pay bills. Like, this is a universal experience for the majority. The majority. And on another note, if a company cannot afford to pay somebody $15 an hour for the job they're doing, that job's probably not very valuable. And if $15 does not cover the cost of that job, what is it necessary? And if it is necessary, then it is worth $15 an hour. So I don't want to hear any arguments of, oh, they just need to get a more valuable job. All jobs have value or they wouldn't exist.
I don't know about you, but I track the inflation in this country through the price of these. A gas station Polar Pop, a gas station Sody, if you will. When I first moved to this city 5 years ago, one of these bad boys was 59 cents, right? They started slowly going up. They went up to about 79 cents, stayed that way for a while. But then the last year, they have just gone up 10 cents, 10 cents, 10 cents, 10 cents, 10 cents. It feels like every couple days. Last week I got one, it was 90 cents. Now I went in to get one today, it was $1.06. What do you mean this went from a 59-cent soda to $1.06? I get $1.06 ain't the end of the world, but what the fuck You don't even clean those fountain things. I know I'm getting a dirty, sticky, nasty soda pop. I don't value myself. Why do you think I'm going to the gas station to get me a polar pop? And y'all want to inflate the prices on a gas station soda? Don't even get me started at restaurants charging $3.99 for a fucking Dr. P. It's time to knock it off. Knock the prices back down. This is unacceptable. I should never get a gas station soda and have to bring in more than $1. The fact that I'm bringing in a paper bill at all is disgusting. This is for car change purchases, and you know that. I didn't need to tell you that.
Inflation is sky high. Salaries are down low. Let's talk about it. I just got a job opportunity for $40,000, but it doesn't kick in for 13 months. First, you have to make $32,000. If we go back, let's say 40 years to what a lot of the boomers talk about, in 1983, $40,000 worth approximately $121,500 today. That seems reasonable. The issue is that the job today in 2023 pays $40,000 after a 13-month waiting period. That's not just a waiting period. You have to work that entire time and try to survive. And then make it even worse, if inflation continues at 8%, by that next 13 months, when you get to $40,000, it's now devalued down to about $36,800, making it worth even less. How are we supposed to survive on this? Companies aren't paying anything. They're paying wages like it's 1983. Boomers, it's not 1983. You guys are the CEOs. Pay more money for the job so that people can survive. What are we doing out here? How are we supposed to survive on that amount of money? It's insane. Inflation's crazy.
So I got offered a job as a CNA to a company doing home health, and I asked what the pay was like, and they said it's going to be $13 an hour, and that I could possibly go up to $15, but they would pay $15 at the most. I had to turn it down because it just literally is not enough money. Like, I would have to hire a babysitter or put my kids in daycare, and $15 an hour is not going to cover that. Daycare on the military base where I'm at is close to $800 a month per child, and that's supposed to be income-based, which honestly I don't think it is. And if you go out in town for daycare, it's even more expensive than that. And babysitters, rightfully so, want at least $13 an hour to babysit. And to pay them $13 an hour for the same hours that I'm working for $13 an hour, that just literally doesn't make sense. I would just be going to work to pay for babysitting. CNAs are just so underpaid.
A quick reminder, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's continue the video.
Let's talk about inflation. And let's start by saying this clearly. You did not cause it. They want you to think it was your stimulus check, or too much government spending, or people not wanting to work. But while they told you to brace for hard times, corporations raised prices far beyond their already profitable prices and made record profits. This wasn't cost-driven inflation. It was opportunistic price gouging. And how do we know? Because profit margins expanded. CEOs bragged about pricing power on earning calls. Stock buybacks surged. So let's be honest. They used the pandemic and the recovery as a cover to squeeze you harder. And when prices went up, what did central banks do? Raise interest rates. Who does that hurt? Not the corporations, not the billionaires. It hurts renters, homeowners, small business owners. It hurts workers trying to keep up. This is not a story about too much money. It's a story about who has the power to raise prices and who has to pay for them. And if we don't name that, we'll keep punishing the wrong people to serve the greedy.
These corporations are out of their minds. They're out of their minds. What happened to share the wealth? You guys have made record profits. Congratulations. Maybe a $2 raise? $3 raise? How about $5 raise? Come on, man, share the wealth. You guys have made all this money, all these billions. Not just millions, billions. We've been working hard. Just share the wealth a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. A little portion of your wealth. You already have 3 yachts. Come on.
I want to say congratulations to the American worker. We're getting a little bit done on the economics, meaning higher wages. and some of the so-called lower earning jobs. We are definitely pushing corporate America to higher wages. But here comes inflation. Here comes inflation. Every time the American people demand more money in a way that they have to give it to us, here comes inflation. And here's the trick with inflation. Things will skyrocket. And when they come down, they'll never quite come down to where they were. And that's your raise. You in the same place. My bad. You took 2 steps forward and then your wheel started spinning again because this government ain't trying to give up shit that corporate America not letting them.
Making $30,000 a year is equivalent to 2024
That's $160,000, folks. Let me tell you something. The money supply doubles every 10 years. So from 1983 to 2023, the money supply has quadrupled. Now you tell me, when you're working your job, if you do the bare minimum, chances are at the end of the year, you get a 3% raise. So at the end of 10 years, you got a 30% raise. But hey, guess what? The money supply has doubled. So technically, you're supposed to earn 100% more money at the end of 10 years, not 30%. And again, I'm not saying that that's what you're making. You'll get a promotion, whatever the case may be, but that's just what we're up against. When did they raise the minimum wage? I don't even know. But check this out too, right? So you're working hard. You got to work extra for the shitty money while they're making all the money. You put it into a savings account if you have a savings account, or you put it into a retirement fund if you have one, and you're giving the banks money again so they can gamble it on the corporations that you're working for so they can make more profits and dividends. How is this fucking fair? I am getting so tired of this system. You're making less money, everything costs more, and you have no time to get ahead. This is what we're mad about, folks. This is the Monopoly game, and somebody else won the Monopoly game already, and you're still playing. You're still playing until that bank account's empty. What happens at the end of Monopoly game? You stop playing. We flip this fucking board because we're done with it. I forgot to mention taxes. Taxes go up. So even less of your money is yours. And that's it.
Have you ever looked at your paycheck and thought to yourself, man, the amount on this paycheck is not enough because I know the amount of work I've put in this last week or 2 weeks and the amount of time I've given to this job, not only working at the job, but driving in traffic just to get to the job and to get home from my job. Have you ever just looked at your paycheck and said, nah, I'm worth more than this?
What is the highest raise you've ever gotten at work in one calendar year? Because I'm really curious to see if the average actually is more than inflation or if we're all just getting ripped off a little bit.
Okay, we got to talk about it. So why did I look up Texas apartments just to see what the prices are like, right? And why are the prices like 15, 17, 2,000? Like, that's California prices, and the minimum wage is like $7, $8. That's illegal, right?
Okay, but tell me why I'm working overtime and I'm still freaking broke. And now, don't get me wrong, I make good money. I make over $25 an hour. But I do have 3 kids and a wife, and let me tell you, leading a family is financially stressful. I work all the overtime I'm allowed to get. Anytime I can get any overtime, I always work it. But no matter how much overtime I work, it doesn't seem like this paycheck to paycheck thing will ever end. And that's just something that I deal with and I kind of internalize and I don't talk about. But I can't be the only one that feels this way, right? I mean, surely there are other people out there who are tired of just getting by, man. Like, when I was in high school just 10 years ago, like, $10 or $12 an hour was really good money, and I remember thinking if I could just get out and make $15 an hour, I'm set. I'll have a good savings, I'll be able to afford a house, a car. I'm 29 years old, and though some of it is, actually I would say a lot of it is because of some of the decisions I made in my teenage years and early adulthood. A lot of why I don't have a house is because of the economy and how shit is just expensive. Like, I don't know. It's disgusting, to be honest. Like, just to live and not have any money to do anything with. If you agree, let me know in the comments. But what are we doing about it? That's another thing. You know, instead of complaining about it, what are we doing about it? Let me know some side hustles. I've tried a whole lot of stuff, but mostly this TikTok right here, if you watch to this point, you're helping me get to that goal. So I appreciate it. Even if only 200 of you end up seeing it.
So America think they sleep. The government think they sleep. around this time last year, I was leaving my job at McDonald's. Now, around that time, they was going through a worker shortage. So, like, it was big companies and stuff. They didn't have, like, enough employees and shit, right? Shortly after that, I don't know in what time span, but y'all remember when gas prices and shit was, like, out the ass? Y'all remember when inflation is actually at 6.4%. And I'm going to Google check this. Hold on. All right, here we go. So, yeah, inflation is at 6.4%. Now, let's take a beautiful look at minimum wage. As y'all can see, minimum wage is $7.25. Now, minimum wage has been $7.25 since 2008. So they haven't increased minimum wage in 15 years. Meanwhile, inflation is at a consistent rate and actually getting higher. I believe that every time it becomes a point to where a lot of people are quitting their jobs or there is a huge labor shortage, I feel like they go up on inflation. I do not think it is a coincidence that they haven't changed minimum wage in 15 years, but inflation is consistent. That is not a coincidence. I feel like all of this shit is calculated. Some people are literally waiting for shit to get better from the government, and it's not. This system is specifically crafted and designed to keep us working. And I think inflation is just a really good tool to keep people in jobs. So it's like you've seen that a lot of people went back to the workforce when gas and shit became like $50 a fucking gallon.
Getting degrees for nothing. Degree inflation is what happens when more jobs require you to have.
So I got to this original video through a stitch of somebody who was saying they were really struggling to find a job because all of these jobs that, you know, they would have been able to do without a college degree in like the 80s or 90s, now they require at least a bachelor's. And I wanted to add to this because this absolutely aligns with my experience, but from another side. And that is that I can tell you these employers are definitely extremely freaking delusional because, you know, while they're passing up all the people who really want these jobs and are trying to get these jobs, you know who they're targeting is actually people like me who are chasing jobs in a completely different area and don't want those jobs. So employers are complaining and they're like, hey, yeah, no one wants to work. It's crazy how we can't find anyone. It's not that they can't find people who want that job. It's that they're passing over all of the people who are like really fighting to get that job and on the delusional premise, like absolutely delusional premise that they're going to get somebody with like a graduate degree with like 10 years of experience in a scientific field, multiple scientific publications, who's currently like working in biotech on a track to put them in like biotech leadership, that they're going to get that person to work as a receptionist. Like I said, delusional. And I'm not pulling that out of nowhere. Like, I'm a biotech worker. I currently work on like managing research projects for a large manufacturer of MRI machines, and the trajectory for me from here is like I could pretty easily get into like regional research management. I could go over to human factors and like a lot of tracks to in the next 1 to 3 years put me into like the 6 figures, like very, very comfortable realm, right? So that's what I'm going to do because that aligns with my personal interests. And meanwhile, I am getting aggressively targeted by recruiters trying to bring me in for jobs like entry-level data clerk or, you know, an entry-level receptionist or administrative assistant or things that like I would have been interested in, you know, 5 years ago when I was looking for a job to put myself through school. And I did work a job like that 5 years ago, putting myself through school. But it's not a job that I want now. And I'm not shy about telling the recruiters this either. I'm like, hey, like, I don't want this job. Like, somebody with my degrees and experience isn't going to want this job. Like you're not going to find someone. But if you're willing to lower, you know, your recruiting standards and look for someone with like this set of experience instead, I could refer you to like 5 different people who would like love this job and would be able to start tomorrow. But they don't want to do that because, like I said, they're delusional.
The job market has gotten so disrespectful. I swear to God. I literally just saw a posting for a litigation attorney, and the salary was $40,000 to $50,000 for a JD, Juris Doctorate.
Okay. Bro, jobs just ain't the same today, bro. Back then,
Bro, you didn't have to tolerate shit from nobody, because back in the day, jobs was getting you in left and right like it was nothing. I'm talking about you in like clockwork, short. I mean, you can quit today and be starting a whole different position tomorrow somewhere else, G. You ain't have to tolerate none of the bullshit that you gotta go through today, because you just ain't getting hired in as quickly or as often as you were back in the day. I'm talking about you ain't have to tolerate a damn thing. You be like, you trying to make me do something extra that's not in my job description? I'm gone. You working around me and didn't wash your ass today? I'm gone. You bent over and I seen the whole crack of your ass? Goodbye. I'm talking about shorty. It didn't matter how good or how dumb the reason was. You could leave like it was nothing and not be stressing about finding, because you was going to get in something else. You had all the temp agencies and it just ain't the same no more.
If anyone ever needs a good laugh, look up how much money a CEO or a CFO make from a nonprofit. It's public information considering it's a nonprofit, so you guys could easily find it. Because when I found out how much a CEO at a nonprofit I used to work at years ago made, I was gagged. Because what do you mean this was like 2012 and you got like 5 Teslas, an electric bike, you're got a house that's all paid for, and you work for a nonprofit that we couldn't even give our kids extra plasticware because we were running low. The system's fucked, guys. It's fucked.
As happy as I should be right now that the wage for RNs in Ontario has gone up, I'm not. And I'm not because RPNs, their wage has not gone up. But we're collectively all nurses. Regardless if an RPN in some institutions, in some facilities or organizations cannot even work there, depending if they're RN-only hospitals, they work in a lot of diverse settings and they deserve an equitable pay. So I don't feel like as RNs we should be happy to get an increase if our colleagues aren't. There needs to be equitable pay across the board. RPNs that work in long-term care homes and have to work in certain conditions, don't have gloves, there needs to be better.
The way to solve all of this inflation problem, wage rate and the inflation rate has to be the same. It just has to be. There is no way around it. Wages have not been keeping up with inflation. So in theory, you are making less per year just because of very high inflation. In theory, so it's just not making sense anymore. It's not. And all of these price hikes from corporations are literally insane. 30%, 50%. Some products, 120%. Way ahead of the inflation.
Does anybody else wonder, how rich people who exploit others for their own personal gain, a lot of those people, when you bring up, we need to raise minimum wage, they try to spout off that inflation would skyrocket if we did that. Inflation is at an all-time high right now, and we didn't raise minimum wage. So, how does that argument actually work? Inflation's already high anyway. Why would it matter if inflation skyrocketed? At least people would be getting paid a livable wage. Does that make sense? I just feel like that's always been the argument. Oh, inflation, we can't pay workers more because then everything would cost more. Everything costs more and we're not getting paid anymore. It doesn't make sense.
I saw this video that said the people making $700 an hour are telling the people that make $25 an hour that the people that make $7 an hour are the reason that they're struggling. And almost everyone's like, makes sense. Yeah.
Everybody needs to tell me what they do for a living because I'm literally flabbergasted. I'm 28 years old. I was in the Air Force for literally 7 years. Half of my 20s I spent in active duty military. I have thousands of hours of experience. I've been working since I was 13 years old. I've worked in hospitals, eating disorder rehabilitations, centers, residential centers. I've worked as a barista. I have customer service. I've worked on the telephone lines. I've worked as a florist. I've literally done almost everything. I'm a full-time college student on my GI Bill. Where I live, the average rent is at least $2,800 to $3,000 a month. Just for like literally black mold, horrible like living situations. Like it's just disgusting. Tell me why. Like I'm almost done with my degree and I have so much experience like in the nutrition world and like healthcare, all that stuff. I have my associate's degree in health service management. Every job that is that's open, that's hiring is literally it's like $15 an hour. I genuinely I don't understand what's going on in the country.
So here's the answer of why you won't feel poor anymore. You've been feeling poor because 2022 inflation spiked, 2023, 2024, and it's been running ahead. So right now, currently, 2022, inflation ended at about 6.5%, way farther than we need to be. 2023, it was at 4.1%. 2024 is rounded out about 2.7% for the year. What does that mean? Well, wages in 2022 actually went up about on average, for the average person, 3.4%. Wages in 2023 went up about 3.8% on average for the person. And wages in 2024 looking at selling around 3.3%. What does this mean? This means right now you're about 2.8%. The average person is about 2.8% in cost below inflation, behind inflation. So what does that mean? That means if you keep your current job, you're going to actually be behind, and you're going to still feel that tightness that you've been feeling for these last 2 years behind the 8 ball for about another 2 or 3 years, because you have to think that the average person gets a raise of about 3%. If inflation is running at 2 and some change percent, then that difference is what catches you up. And the distance it will take is mathematically about 3 years, 3 to 4 more years. So what do? You actually have to increase your income this year by at least 7%. That means you have to, if you have a side hustle, increase the pay on that. If you have a job, you have to increase the pay. That means you might have to switch jobs. But somewhere to get some sense of normalcy, you're going to have to come up about 7% in your income to just be living at the same standard that you were 3 years ago.
So I don't know how much longer we're going to have this app. And since we've really come together and used it as a platform to talk to each other, help each other, create communities, find ways of surviving, sharing what each of us have individually learned to help teach others to survive in a society that is really rigged against us, I thought this was an important piece to share, because it took me this long in my working career to really figure out and get a straight answer from the appropriate departments of where I work. Now, for some context, I work for a hospital, and my position is not entry level. It is required for a hospital to run. I have a degree. I had to take special training, licensing, and I had to take training every year to maintain that license. It's not an entry-level job, but for my position, a report came out somewhat recently, months ago, and it showed that, we're being very underpaid in our area. And sorry, I'm still just reeling from it. And so I took the report on behalf of my department. They all agreed that this is not okay. We're all feeling the squeeze, and we're not sure how to survive with what we're making right now. And in the city that my hospital is, inflation is around 20% the last time I checked, and that was around December, so I don't even know how bad it is now, because we all know it's worse. Cost of living, inflation, food, all of it. So we're making less now than we did before, less buying power. We have not had raises, bonuses, or fair increase of pay. So my boss's boss took it to the compensation department, and she read the email that she got back. And again, my whole point in sharing this is those that may not know, like I didn't know, because they would say, oh, we're paying you within the fair range of a market value. And whenever I would ask, what is the market value? Where do you get your numbers? How do you make that decision of what that is? They never gave me an answer. So they gave my boss's boss an answer. I guess they felt like she was deserving because she's high enough in the ranks. That's what they do, right? They keep us in the dark. And they said market value is only what like the demand cost is for your position. So if you're not very valued, they can just underpay you whatever they want. And it does not take inflation and cost of living into account. Like just sit on that a minute. It does not take inflation and cost of living into account. How is that market value? Oh, that's just the word that they chose for it to make it sound better. Because basically everyone at the top is just deciding, oh, we're just deciding your value so we can underpay you and we can line our pockets more and our businesses can make more. But you don't deserve to have, a home or rent or food or fair insurance or anything because it's fair market value that we decided, not what the economy is showing. How are we supposed to live? So again, market value does not take into account inflation and cost of living. And it's a bunch of rich people that just decide what they feel you're worth. Even if their company literally needs you to run. Like my job, hospital can't legally function without my job. But okay. It was a lot to stomach today, and I know some of you may have already understood this, but I came on here to share to those who have gotten the same runaround and not gotten straight answers. I'm here to help educate, share information and perspective of really how terrible this place is. What are we gonna do, guys? What are we gonna do?
I appreciate you guys watching the video today. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.